Alright guys, such coming again today. I hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Lots of reaction to both FaZe Vegas and the Paris Gentlemates being in a very precarious position in these Major 2 qualifiers right now. Octane, Formula, among others, reckon things could be chalked in that Gentlemates camp. They've got a few more matches to try and turn things around. Ghosty, among others, respond to the situation. But how do they get back on track from here, not long after winning Major 1 in Dallas? Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I greatly appreciate it. We're going to dive straight into even Surge. They were taking the piss, right? Surge have been terrible. They brought in Cap. They've got a bit better with Cap, obviously. I mean, the standings are an absolute mess, and we'll talk about them in the coming minutes because it genuinely all to play for right now. I have no idea what is going to happen next. Last year, it was the Los Angeles Gorillas, Gentlemates, or whatever they were called. This year, they've got rid of that. It's officially Paris, but, you know, you killed the man, but not the idea. They're getting slammed again. TJ says, GG C9 in Paris. Big 2-0 week for the boys. So Surge, all of a sudden, might be on their flight to Birmingham. It's far from a guarantee, but just to keep this very clear, because we are doing these 11 qualifiers, the bottom 2 teams after the qualifier single round robin 11 match run don't even get on the plane, and Cloud9 will be one of those teams. The other one, right now, we don't know. You would say maybe Boston, I was going to say maybe Surge, but all of a sudden that looks very difficult to say, and FaZe, genuinely, and Paris are not a million miles away from that conversation. TJ says, gotta work on Overload because that mode is very bad. So, yeah, we know that TJ isn't a big fan of Overload, but Surge, they get the job done regardless, and Paris have now lost their last 4 series on the bounce. And it's not like they've lost to OpTic, to FaZe, to, you know, Thieves, to Toronto, or whatever. Theoretically, some of the top teams. 2 of those series have been to Surge and to Cloud9, right? Which is pretty much unforgivable. So let me show a couple of clips here talking about this. This moment, I mean, we did talk about it yesterday where Envoy just runs out and dies to Cap. They still win the game anyway, but it's like, I don't really know what's going on here. Well, Karma was talking about it, Octane was talking about it, Formal gave his thoughts as well after things concluded, just to say, like, I don't know what's going on in that room, but it's certainly not the same team that we saw them back in Major 1.
Just run
Gwinn
backwards.
had like 40 with 2 minutes.
Oh. What do you think now, man?
Bro, this was, bro, I don't understand this.
I stand on business, same thing. I don't know. A couple weeks ago, I would have said guarantee game 5.
This might be a reverse sweep now. Braxton, thank you so much for the 6 months. Braxton, thank you, brother.
I feel it's so hard not to like go with Gentlemates here, but I don't know. I think it's kind of crazy they lost the star to these guys.
They're just mentally compromised, bro. Look at the teams they're losing.
But they might be. Like, I don't even know. I don't know.
They're in just the full-blown, like, overthinking stage of their team.
They're definitely tweaking in some way.
They're tweaking hard in the S&D, bro. Some of the plays they saw in that Colossus were crazy.
There's an opportunity here.
They're playing Colossus, you know.
Yeah, but no. But like,
Oh my fucking god, bro.
I just can't let you go.
No, imagine. And they call game. Holy fuck. Holy fuck. That's the end of the weekend. 3-1. Oh my god, what is going on in that room, bro? What is going on in that room, bro?
They are without question a new and improved roster that can catch anyone on any given day.
They tried the no lights off strat today as well, bro.
So are Gentlemates frauds? Have they been frauds all along, right? I mean, from the start of the season, they were very good in the online tournament where Rock'Tune turned up on exposure and there was all that drama in the grand finals. OpTic get the win, but then they go to LAN and it was, well, OpTic dominated the tournament until the grand finals. Gentlemates took a great victory there. And we know what this team is capable of on LAN, but it is worthy just to say the first major of every season historically has usually thrown up something of an outlier. Not always this is the case, and maybe an outlier is not quite the right word precisely, but the first tournament of the year is the most volatile. It tends to throw up the most surprises. You will always tend to see a somewhat surprising team there on Sunday. I think we saw that this time with G2, at least to a certain extent. It was FaZe, OpTic, and Paris outside of that, probably the teams that we expected to be there. So it wasn't like it was some crazy tournament where it was all sorts of randomness and chaos all the time. But often, the winner of the first tournament has a difficult time replicating that for the rest of the season. The game moves on, the game changes, other teams look what you're doing, and you know it's easy to get to, not easy to get to the top, but it's easier to get to the top than it is to stay there. And if you look at previous seasons, even last year, right, FaZe won the first event, then they won the second event, but after that, it wasn't going to plan, and at the end of the year, they were terrible. We've had years where Toronto starts strong, they win the first event, and then it collapses. Even back in Vanguard, OpTic won the first event, then they weren't the same team for the rest of the year, really. So there was other factors in play there, right? The season Modern Warfare 2, when it was New York who won the first event, and then they came back and won champs as well, but they did have a horrendous slump in the middle. Even you go back to years like Infinite Warfare, right? Like the first usually games of those or tournaments of those seasons were not won by teams that were going to be especially competitive or even going to be rosters at all in a few months' time. So you've always got to take Major 1 with a little bit of an okay, it's a nice warm-up, but it doesn't necessarily mean this is going to last, and it usually doesn't. But as I've said, teams that do win the first event and then get back to being a top team, they usually go through some sort of a slump, some sort of a down phase, and that is absolutely where Gentlemates are right now. The question always with this team was when they went through a period like this, which I didn't expect to be this bad, right? Like I expected Gentlemates to probably not be quite as dominant online. You know, maybe they would finish this stint of 11 matches 7-4, something in that kind of ballpark. I wasn't expecting it to be to this level, and that makes all the questions about the chemistry and the vibes, and I mean, look at these faces, right? Like, it ain't looking great, and there's lots of discussion as to whether they can claw themselves out of this hole. Ghosty says, GG's to G2 and Vancouver, went 0-2 this weekend, not playing like ourselves. And people might say, and it might be justifiable, okay, turn up to the major, it's going to be a different story on LAN. The problem is, if you turn up to the major starting in the play-in bracket, that gives you a difficult chance to even make the bracket and a bad seed to try and make a decent run. And for this tournament, you might not even end up going in the first place. So it's unfortunate that online COD is as important as it is, but there's no doubt that the troubles they're currently going through are going to affect their entire mentality around the team. It's not like you just turn up to LAN and it magically fixes everything, even if they even qualified to go, which I'm sure that they will, but the chances are not 100% by any means. So Vios, who's the coach, says, another poor weekend, tough situation to be in. We've got to keep pushing and be resilient. We're going to do what we can to give back to the fans. Sorry once again. So, look, the Gentlemates fans are losing a little bit of patience now. Yeah, they're going to be happy with that Major 1 win, but they've got a major coming up in a few months' time. They want to be winning that tournament as well. They want to be at the grand finals. It is what, as I say, that Subliners team a few years ago did when they won the first event, then they fell off and they came back and won the penultimate event before champs and in the World Championship. But is that the same type of team, right? Did they have more mental stability than this Gentlemates roster? Possibly. And Octane goes on to say the Gentlemates are completely mentally compromised. So, as I've said, I don't know what you do with the roster because they just won the event. So, it's impossible to argue to make changes. And in FaZe's case, at least they have an obvious player on the bench that if you have to make a move, there it is. For Gentlemates, that is not clear, especially because they are still the reigning champions of the first major. So, look, they're just going to have to get back to the lab and figure out what's going on. But the problem is that if there's already, I don't know, rifts, bit of friction behind the scenes, that becomes more challenging to do. And Octane reckons that is exactly what is going on right now. I will say the arguable karma for this situation is Envoy, right? So people are clowning him and they're going to keep on clowning him, and understandably maybe for the challenger's take, right? So as Envoy, well, he dropped a 0.6 in yesterday's series. He actually had like so little damage, it was kind of ridiculous. He was missing, even to Sib, who was the next lowest damage, but to Ghosty, he was missing like 3,500 damage. It's like, what is brother doing on the map? This is what Envoy said, right? It was March, actually coming up to a year to the date, pretty much, this quotation, when Envoy made the argument that expansion is not wise because there's not enough talent to justify it. He didn't precisely, at least initially, he didn't precisely say there's no good players in challenges, there's no talent at all. His argument was, there isn't enough talent to justify an expansion to 16 teams, which I still disagree with, but is not such an outrageous take. But he actually doubled down on this a couple of times. You guys might remember he called out Super as well, and which is pretty funny based on where Heretics currently look compared to where Gentlemates are, but also even last season when Heretics went on to do some pretty good stuff against Thieves, where Envoy was last year towards the end of the year. But he also doubled down in May, and this is after they won Major 4, as you can tell, and he said Challengers players come into the league, they talk trash, and they get dead last. It's insane. So, yeah, Envoy was talking pretty crazy. We'll have a look at these standings in more... This is the season standings. We'll have a look at the overall in just a second. OpTic have, by the way, officially overtaken Gentlemates now, which might not come as too much of a surprise. But if you look at Envoy's most recent series, he's sitting at a 0.91. These are his last 5. So they beat Ravens, congrats, but their last 4 series, they've lost to Cloud9, a team with 4 Challengers players, and, you know, not even considered to be good ones at that. No disrespect to Cloud9, but, like, they were far from the first choice. About 20 players said no to Cloud9, I think, before those guys said yes. Lost to them 3-2. Toronto features Kips, brand new player, up from Challengers. They 3-0'd Envoy. Minnesota, featuring, well, Mamba, rookie for this season. They get beat by him. And then Vancouver, featuring, okay, Capstor's been around a couple of years, but Lunarz is on that roster, right? He's still pretty new. So all of these teams have at least some sort of what you might call Challengers talent, and Envoy's average KD over those 4 series is about a 0.7, right? Like, it's not great. It's actually atrocious. So that's what it looks like over the last few series, and Envoy's individual level has been the key question mark lately with the Gentlemates. Of course, Ghosty hasn't played well as of late either. It's not been quite as bad, although it's still been pretty bad. So if we look at the overall season standings and we filter by Major 2, this is what we find. And it's, again, Major 1 standings were pretty wild, right? These are the Major 1 standings. Paris ended number 1 seed at 5-2. You know, there was several teams at 5-2, 4-3. We were like, wow, these standings are crazy. We've never seen anything like this before. And that was largely true. This stage's standings are, if anything, even more interesting because you've got OpTic at 8-0. They're flying. They've got 3 more games to go. Those games are up against the Gentlemates next. So there we go. Falcons and Koi. So not the easiest games for sure. OpTic, you know, they could win all of those games. They all be favourites too. But I wouldn't be surprised if they lost one match in there. But it's 8-0 for OpTic so far. Everyone else, it's all to play for. Thieves are 4-3. Somehow still the 2nd seed, I guess because they've got a good map count. Falcons are 4-3. Miami are 4-3. So are G2 Minnesota. So that comes down to seed 6 with Toronto at 4-4. So Toronto have fought their way back to a 4-4 record. Now, just to keep it very clear, the top 6 are guaranteed the bracket. 7 through 10 go to Birmingham, but they play a play-in to get to the bracket effectively. I'm not sure how it literally, like, logistically works, whether the teams in the top 6 get some sort of a bye or whether it's like a GSL style win 2 before you lose 2 play in for those 4 teams. But that's how it stands. And then the bottom 2 teams, they don't even go to Birmingham in the first place. Now, what's interesting here is because FaZe and Boston are tied at 3-5 and Boston won the head-to-head, I would imagine that actually Boston should probably be the 10th seed here. I know that FaZe have a better game-win, game-loss, and obviously it's not going to end this way anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But just to keep in mind that, yeah, Cloud9 are cooked, they're 1-6. I don't think they're going to be able to claw themselves out of this hole. But the rest of it is absolutely all over the place. Like, there's still a world, I guess, where Thieves lose all of their upcoming games and they end up down in hell. Now, 4 wins is going to be enough to at least get you to the tournament, right? Like, I would imagine so. But it's still not absolutely guaranteed because let's say Cloud9 lose out and they end up 1-10. The only team that have beaten would be the Gentlemates. 3 wins is not enough to guarantee you to get to Birmingham, which I thought that it probably would be. I was expecting maybe Surge to go 2-9 or something, but no, they're 3-4. So they're in 9th, and really the seedings on the left-hand side don't mean much here because it's all so closely competitive. Like Paris are 3-4. Boston are 3-5, and it's not much difference between them, especially if Gentlemates get 3-0'd by OpTic. All of a sudden, they're in the same boat. So, as remarkable as it is, while, yes, do I think that it's more likely that Boston or even Surge or maybe Ravens are the other team not to make it? Boston play Gentlemates next. I mean, like, what an absolutely huge game that is. If Boston could win that game, they will be at the major probably with that. And Gentlemates games are OpTic, Boston, FaZe and Thieves. So, look, again, if they beat Boston and get to 4 wins, they will at least probably go to the major. Even then, 4 wins might not be enough because Surge, they might easily get to 4. And, you know, all of these teams arguably could get to 4 wins. And then the 11th seed is going to be a team that's like 4-7. If there is a team that ends up 3-8, I think they will be the other team to join Cloud9. Again, I'm writing Cloud9 off here. Maybe they can still do something, but it's just worth looking at the fact that 7 through 11, it's all to play for, and one of those teams isn't even getting on the flight. And it could be FaZe, or it could be Gentlemates. FaZe's upcoming games, as we see here, they've already played OpTic now, so they play Ravens, again, Gentlemates and Cloud9, but they do have the Cloud9 free win, you would think, in FaZe, so they should be okay. But yeah, it's difficult to put into words just how all to play for it is right now. And Gentlemates, despite a 3-0 start, are genuinely at some risk, if this continues, of not even going to defend their title. So very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.